Recording. Good evening, ladies and gents. This is the first of the tutorials in 2018. This is week 7. Okay, so we have Michael, Debbie, Jason, and Mary here. Good evening to all of you, and Happy New Year. Now, this week we're talking about skills, and I have to compliment Anthony Marinak for doing this because the skills are really, really important. This is the type of skills, these things that you need for practice. We've just been talking about the assignment, just generally speaking, and how important it is that you have a client. Your client wants to know what the potential result will be, and you need these skills to be able to provide the client with it. Like, I go to the doctor looks at me. Doctor doesn't have x-ray vision. We'll need to do tests, and based on those tests and what I tell the doctor will make a diagnosis and advise me. And in a way, it's not dissimilar to what a lawyer does. Okay, so what I want to do tonight is I just made a note of a couple of things. I've introduced myself and said Happy New Year. I was reading the paper yesterday about a dentist in Taiwan. Did anyone read that? That was actually very interesting. A single mother, said to her sons, she will pay their tuition fees at the university for them to become dentists, provided that they give her a defined percentage of the practice income, profits of the practice. I've forgotten what it was, 10%, something like that. And they signed it up, and then one of the sons had already paid $1 million. The other part. So there would be a certain percentage up to a certain amount. Let's say $1.5 million. And one son had already paid $1 million and didn't want to pay any more. And the mother said, no, we have a written agreement, not just an oral agreement. We have a written agreement where we want you, we agreed that you would pay up to and including $1.5 million, and went to court. How do you think that would have been decided?
Commercial agreement, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, there's a capacity. It's in family. What's the usual situation with families? The presumption.
Well, its presumption is that family agreements are voidable. Yeah. In other words, it's not an agreement. It's just a social domestic situation. So it's not binding unless it's rebutted to the contrary. And the judge said, keep in mind this was in Taiwan, which is a completely different jurisdiction, different way of thinking, etc. But if it was here in Australia, the judge could have said, well, look, you didn't just do a verbal agreement. It was reduced into writing. And there was discussion about, it was a single mother. It was really hard for her to pay for all this. And in their culture, the Chinese culture, it's important that children are taken care of, and later on they'll return the favour by taking care of the parents. And the judge said, no problems, you paid $1 million already, and there's $500,000 still to go, in round figures. Okay, so that's an interesting case there. Okay, now we'll just go through the week 7 material. Clearly I'm not going to go through the whole lot, but I just want to say to you how important it is to have some sort of a concrete checklist of doing things. And Anthony's got his IRAC method of doing things, which really essentially is that you got to look at the facts, you got to look at the law, you put the two together and come to a conclusion. And that's the main thing. He says right in the very beginning, the first of his steps is to read the question. And I just got to say to you, it is so important to read the question. Read it 3, 4, 5 times. Now, when I was going through law school, we had examinations. Everything was based on examinations. You're different, it's on assignments. But it's still the same thing too. You have to read it through. You don't want a mistake. It's a crime to make a mistake on the in your assignment because you've misread, you haven't thought it through. So that's really what I want to say to you. And just make sure you understand the parties. It's like he says in his lecture, it's like a cast to a play. Just understand it, and
and get a timeline. In other words, make sure you get the time sorted out. Now, I do lots and lots of work in a quasi-legal way where I go to court where I work as an expert witness and in a financial area. And what the barristers and the solicitors totally love is a sheet of paper with a chronological history of what happened. On the 1st of January, this happened. The 2nd of January, the 4th of January, whatever. You have that, and it's really important. So when you get the practice later on, having a chronological history in order and then having the relevant documents beside it is really, really helpful. I can certainly say that to you. And then he talks about the first of his items, the I of Iraq is the issues. And just be really, really careful that you can distinguish between issues of fact and issues of law. And he gave the example of, I'm driving at 70 kilometres and I'm picked up for speeding. Well, the issue at law is what is the speed limit, and the issue of fact is how fast indeed I was driving. And you've got to be really careful to separate those two out. Watch out for what he calls non-issues. And non-issues are the red herrings. Red herrings are bits and pieces we put in to confuse you. We shouldn't say that, but in that, what we try to do is put things in because otherwise it's too easy for you. Because if everything you read was relevant, it makes it too easy for you. So we've got to put certain things in which are not relevant, and you have to sort through which are relevant and which are not relevant. Because keep in mind, ultimately the focus is on the questions of law. Most law school questions are there. Then it comes to the relevant law, which is the R part, and you just got to know the law there, and clearly you've got to know the cases and the statutes. Now in this subject, it's generally speaking case-based. And so I remember, was it agreement, I think we had 26 cases in that. So you just got to know your cases. Well, actually, I take a step back. You got to know your principle, and then the principle comes from somewhere. That's your case. And if you think the law is unsettled, and he gave an example of I've forgotten what he gave an example of. He said there was something in Queensland, privity it was, and there's a thing about good faith and stuff like that in contracts. It's a little bit unsettled to me. Well, say so, and that's where you get your extra marks. And indeed, when you're in practice, if you say to me, "Oh, there's a very good chance of doing this," but indeed the law was unsettled. Well, I wouldn't be very happy with that as a client. I want you to tell me the law is unsettled, and then we can discuss it from there, because that brings ambiguity in it. It lowers my percentage of success, and therefore it might affect the way I think about how much am I going to put into this case, whether I'm going to put the case in at all. Because in commercial cases, it's all about money, of course. Should I invest another 50 grand to potentially get 200 grand? Now, if the percentages drop, well, I might say, well, I'm not going to invest at all. We'll settle out of court. These are the practical issues. So that's R. R is the relevant law. So you got to know the law, and we're going to be doing shortly a question with VJ, the tattoo person. We need to look at the law in relation to that. And I also want to talk about the previous week, the girl in Queensland. I want to talk about that too. So I've just got on my list of things to do tonight. And then when we look at Iraq, there's the fourth item is we apply the facts to the law. And that, again, that's quite straightforward, is that we need to know what the facts are, and what was the speed of the car, what was the reason for travelling in case I did speed. Was my wife about to give birth in the next 5 minutes, and I was screaming to the hospital, etc., etc. And of course, I think you're all mature age students there, but you got to be a little bit careful. Sometimes people get a bit upset when the law is wrong law, or it's old law, it hasn't been changed yet, and it doesn't match community expectations, or it comes to an unjust outcome. You can't do anything about that, and you just got to pass it through. I know with myself, when I came from a science and a numbers background, being an accountant, I had difficulties when I started law in two areas. Reading the cases, they were sort of older English. It's like reading something from Dickens. You get used to it reasonably quickly. But what took me a long, long time to get used to is that there are fuzzy edges. In the engineering, in the science, in the accountancy area, 1 + 1 is 2. It's reasonably clear. In the law, well, it might be this, well, it might be that, and it's really difficult. It was difficult for me to get my brain around that, and sometimes it's still a little bit difficult for me because it's just not clear. So we've got that, and then. He also mentions in step number 5, consider other alternatives. So that's really important to look at. Argue in the alternative. What you say something like this. Look, if I'm wrong, which I don't think I am, but if I'm wrong, the situation may be this, this, and this. Okay. Now, that shows that you understand both situations. Okay, and Anthony was mentioned that in his lecture there, but it's actually very important. When I have clients in front of me, and I used to practice in tax law and commercial law and etc. like that, I'd say to them, look, I reckon this is the way it's going to go, but let's argue in the alternative. Let's have a backup plan if it works this way. And it's really not clever to go into a case by just going in one direction only. You've got to be prepared in case it goes the other way, particularly if there's a high degree of probability that it may go like that. Okay, and these are all the practical aspects I'm talking about, which may be of interest to you in the future, but they also emanate from this. And then the C part of IRAC is the conclusion. And as Anthony clearly pointed out, answer the question. I can't tell you over the years, because I've been doing this for 30 years, teaching law, one with the other, many different subjects. I just can't tell you how many times that they've written, they've almost like vomited out all this material over the page, but the question hasn't been answered. I want to give you marks, but you've got to show me that you understand what's there. So look at the question. So later on with VJ, I think there were 5 questions. Now, if you just spoke about the 3 contracts, because there are 3 contracts there, that doesn't answer the 5 questions. Then I have to go ferreting through and piece it all together. Make life easy. If you're asked for 5 issues, answer the issues. Make it quite clear. Heading, underline, bold, however you want, and answer the questions. And then all the preparation in the past, all you can do is put an introduction and a bit of an outline and stuff like that, and there you are. So I didn't want to do too much on the IRAC part, but I just want to say to you, it is fundamentally important to most subjects in law school, because you'll be sitting at your desk and the client will come in and have a problem, like the tender problem that you have to have for tomorrow, or the golf problem, or indeed you don't go into the law, but you work in the commercial sphere. Who was I talking to before? I was talking to Debbie before. So she's working in the commercial sphere, and she goes to a superannuation lawyer on the finer details about this quite important matter. She doesn't want us umming and ahhing. She wants something reasonably concrete. Okay. And this is especially so if you become an in-house lawyer. As an external lawyer, in other words, sitting in your firm and you have multiple clients, you can sort of protect your interests by putting all the disclaimers on it. But if you're working as an in-house lawyer, the CEO won't put up with this. The CEO said, well, I want a more definite answer. Stop making give me a more definite answer. But anyway, so therefore you've got to research and provide an answer. So are there anything you want to talk about in relation to the IRAC method? Anything? No. Okay. So what I suggest we do now is we go to the question. We go to the question here. That's VJ, and hopefully you would have done something like look at the characters, like who's who in the zoo. So who are the characters in this this question? Who would the characters be?
We got the main one, which is VJ.
Yep.
He's the tattoo artist or something.
Yep.
And the fellow that came in that was drunk.
Yep. And who else?
Someone else can have a go.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Cousin Grace, wasn't it? I'm just trying to go back there now.
Well, he goes into an electronic shop. So the electronic shop would be another party. And then he's got the eBay contract.
That's correct, yeah.
And that'd be another party again, okay? So I do like what Anthony said, is it's like you go to a book, a traditional play, and at the front they've got the list of characters. And so you know how that is. And then you start from there. You might start with the facts, and you put the facts in order. And if you put them in order, you end up having 3 contracts, or three separate sections to this. And the first section is VJ and the tattoo customer. Agree with that? Yeah.
Right.
And the second one is when VJ goes to the electronics shop. And the third one is the eBay. Okay? Yeah. And then you have issues, and sometimes multiple issues within those. And then you keep them separate. And then what you do is you can look at the law in relation to each of those. You have your issues. And there's a number of ways of doing it. But in essence, Anthony's way is a good way because ultimately, whatever way you do it, you've got to look at the facts and you've got to look at the law and you've got to put the two together and come up with the conclusion. That's the rule one. He's addicted to... He's gone. He's addicted to his PlayStation 4, you know.
I assume it's warm as well.
Was that sorry?
I assume it's warm there as well.
Oh yeah. It's I don't know. It's going to be 41 on Saturday, so it's good. Now I know what it's like when you watch people on television. You know, they're newsreaders. You know, you don't know what they're wearing underneath their waist. You know, they could be wearing shorts or whatever. You know. So it's actually quite warm here. Where were we? So what we're going to talk about, let's have now a chat. Just keep it really straightforward, and let's go to the first tranche of what's happening. Let me talk about VJ and the tattoo customer. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about 2 main issues. Whether there's a contract between VJ and the tattoo customer, and then another issue is in relation to overcharging. So who would like to have a go at whether there's a contract between VJ and the tattoo customer?
I can do that one.
Well, he's capacity.
Okay. So who would like to have a go?
Mary?
Mary, go for it.
I was just going to say capacity comes in to start with because he was inebriated.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the tattoo artist, he didn't actually know what he was doing. You know, like he didn't know about the Chinese characters. He didn't know what they actually meant. And he also did it freehand instead of the way that you're supposed to do it. And he just bumped the price up in the hope that he wouldn't, have to actually to do this. So he knew that he was actually violating the law by doing it.
Okay. So let's look at 2 things: the facts and the law. You give me a lot of the facts.
Yep.
And they go hand in hand. You can't do this job without a really good understanding of the facts. And as Anthony said, later on when you do a course on evidence, they'll come out how to best project those facts. We need to know the facts. You also need to know the law. So what's the main case in the area?
This one, is there a valid contract with VJ and the intoxicated man?
Yes, there's a high court case in the area.
Oh, it's Blomley versus Ryan.
Okay, what does that say?
That's the one where an intoxicated man sold his farm, and then the judge decided to rescind the contract due to his intoxication.
Okay.
Now the 1956 High Court.
High Court of Australia?
Yes.
What about Gibbons and Wright? Anyone look that up? It was in our notes. It was on week 2, page 9. Gibbons and Wright said the contract is voidable. What does voidable mean?
They can remove the contract if they want to.
Yes. So the intoxicated person can go to the court and say, I'm not going to be bound by this contract, as long as they haven't ratified it. Okay. So the contract is voidable. If the intoxicated person was unable to understand the nature of the contract, part 1, okay? Unable to understand the nature of the contract. And the second part, the other party knew that the condition. Okay, so do you think the facts show that the customer was unable to understand the nature of the contract?
I'd put this one down that he knew the nature, and even though he was drunk, he wasn't, it'd only been for that evening sort of thing. He was intoxicated, he wasn't slurring, he was under his own steam. And he provided his own lettering saying it's mates forever. And the tattooer said, no, he doesn't really want to do it, and then gave him a ridiculous price.
You see how important it is, again, how with the facts, we will just accept the ones here, but when you're in a real court case, you need to get these perfect, you need witnesses and things like that. What a headache to get this right. Let's stick to the case here. So Mary, I saw you before. Mary, you reckon that he was intoxicated?
He was, but then he agreed to the price, and he knew exactly what he wanted, and he accepted the price. So you've got a contract, I think, at that stage, because he knew what he wanted, even though he was inebriated. He specifically requested it, and so from my point of view, like, whilst being intoxicated, it makes it avoidable contract. He clearly knew what he wanted, and he was very insistent to the point that he would pay such a high price for it.
Yeah.
Can I just make another point there as well? I remember from capacity isn't there something about capacity where if you do something for someone knowing the state that they're in makes the contract voidable as well?
Yeah, well, that's what Gibbons and Wright says. There was 2 parts to it. If the intoxicated person was unable to understand the nature of the contract and the other party knew of that condition, it's voidable. Okay. See, in the facts here that this guy walked in, he was on his own steam. He said he was drunk, but both parties knew that there was some inebriation, but how far does it affect him? I remember when we did capacity, we spoke about a situation of if you give a person a memorandum about a tax scheme, well, that will probably be far beyond them, but a contract in relation to getting him home from the pub might be quite easy for him to understand. And so... Go on.
The other thing is that later on, when he comes back to complain that it's been done not the way he wanted, it says that he was far more intoxicated because he continued drinking. So, I mean, that gave me the impression that he was, he knew about the contract, and he wasn't so drunk that he didn't understand what he wanted, and he agreed to it, because when he comes back later to complain, it says that he's even more intoxicated because he continued drinking. So he was like, you can be a little bit drunk and still in that position know exactly what you want. But later, when he came back to complain, that it was wrong and he wanted it changed, it says that he was, had been drinking more and he was really, really intoxicated.
Yeah. What about Debbie? What do you think? Anything?
I disagree politely to Mary's point of view. Due to the fact they had a conversation about how he was drunk. It mentioned that he explained he was drunk because he had spent the evening conducting a wake for a friend. So it could be argued that he was emotionally unstable as well as incapacitated due to the alcohol.
I agree.
The counter argument to that would be is your definition. When I say a person's definition of drunk may be different from another person's definition.
Well, BJ actually tried to call it and say, "You're drunk, you have to leave."
Yeah.
And then got talked into it due to greed.
And it wasn't pre-planned because he came with a letter from some Chinese chick, as it puts it. It's not like he had this mind at the funeral. This is a drunken mind, and anyone drunk can still make decisions, just like the example you gave with your friend, client, and cocaine and jewelry. Not thinking clearly, still acts, talk.
But wasn't it pre-planned? Because he just asked that Chinese girl to write down the letters for him. So there was some pre-planning in it.
Well, not while he was sober.
Words.
No, he was in a club drunk and asked some girl at the bar to write down how to say this in Chinese.
Yeah.
That's
not pre-planning.
Do you see what's happening here? We've got people on both sides, and that's where I had difficulty as a person of facts more than law, an accountant, scientist, stuff like that, and see it can go either way. So therefore, when you're advising a client, there is no such thing, rarely such a thing as an open and shut case. What you've got a situation here could go either way. It's what one person said. And remember, the judge is a human being. And sometimes the facts are really such that a person will end up with no money, they've lost their life savings. And what the judge will do, as humans, being a human, they might give an interpretation of the facts which favour the injured party, and so they can get some compensation. Otherwise, they're living on Social Security for the rest of their life. So these are the important issues. What I think, and if I was betting on this, I would think there is a contract, because I think he was not that intoxicated, because the facts might show that. Now, you're more than welcome to disagree, because it's getting very close to borderline here. It depends very much on the nuances of the words which we use. Now, you can imagine a court case 2.5 years after this. Now, we're not talking about $250. We're talking about, you wouldn't go to court for $250. But you put a few zeros after it, 25,000, 250 grand, and then everyone starts playing around with the facts. You're super careful with this. So you've got to know your facts and your law. So let's not go any further anymore with that. So I reckon...
Sorry, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, is anyone else getting a big feedback of
Yes, I am. It's only been on for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, everyone mutes, we'll work it out.
Could everyone... So, Mary, could you mute? Mary, I think it must be you. Mary, can you come back on again? Mary? Mary?
Yeah, I'm back on.
It's gone now. Anyway, it's gone now.
I'm here by myself, so there's no noise. So
yeah, no, it's probably I'm just an IT noise in the background. So look, I personally reckon, I've had a chat to Anthony Marinak about that. We both agree that it's more likely than not that the tattoo customer understood the nature of the contract. But if you feel that the facts show it in your favour, say that. But what you might want to do in a case like this, you argue in the alternative, that I personally believe that there is no contract, because I do consider, on the nature of the facts, that there is a the intoxicated, the tattoo customer was able to understand the nature of the contract. It was not like understanding the nature of a detailed contract to do with employment or anything like that. There was more of a simple contract. However, in the alternative, if I'm wrong, the law would be such and such that it would be voidable. Okay, so you just make it quite clear. If I read that, I'd say this person knows what they're talking about. Okay, so I'm repeating myself. Now, the other thing is that we have this issue about overcharging. What do you see any law on that?
No, and depends if he's got a price list, which must probably. I mean, you can charge what you want. I mean, if we have a client that's difficult in the property development world and going to build from, we might whack another 10 grand on just for the sake of it because he's annoying. It's not illegal.
Remind me not to deal with you, okay?
But, for example, like.
Okay.
Further down, it talks about like the cost factor in terms of a cover-up tattoo and how much that would cost to do. So there must be some sort of like costing scale, you know what I mean? For the size of the tattoo he wanted, the normal price would have been such and such. Well, when you go in, he deliberately put that price up, but I've never been in a tattoo parlor, so I wouldn't have any idea about how they do their pricing, but you would think that by making that statement, what effectively he's done is, raise the price, so he's ripped the guy off.
Yeah.
That's morally wrong, but is it legally wrong, I guess?
Yeah. One of the things that we don't have the facts here, we don't know that whether he has a price list at all, because sometimes businesses providing services and or goods as well may or may not have price lists attached to them. But just to make it quite clear here, I don't think there's a major issue here with the overpricing, because I don't think there's any law against it. Later on, you'll come across a thing called where you take advantage of someone. That it's a situation where you take advantage of them. I don't think that's the case here, and it's very limited. It's called Amadio's case, and we'll leave that out of it. But I don't think there's a situation here, because I do believe that the tattoo customer was able to understand the nature of the contract. They may indeed have said it is really, really important to them to have the tattoo that day, because it's the day of the funeral and the wake, and they're prepared to pay more for it. And they're just happy to do that. He didn't want to go elsewhere. There wasn't nowhere elsewhere. And these are, you got to look at the facts there.
And also the tattoo artist, basically, he did it to try and discourage the man. So he didn't actually do it to kind of rip him off, really. He did it to try and get him to say no and to not want to proceed.
Yeah. Now, I just make a note here. With minors, you can't rip them off. Okay, there is legislation. I think it's a Sale of Goods Act, but it says that you must charge a reasonable amount. That does not apply to intoxicated people or those with basically mentally unable to understand. I do believe he does understand, but what you can do, you can argue an alternative. You just say, if he was not able to understand, well, this is not correct. They shouldn't be able to do that. So look, that's the first one, VJ and the tattoo customer. In summary, I'd say that based on Gibbons and Wright, and this is my conclusion now to make it quite clear, and that's what you should do for the examiner, like I'm doing for you now. So to make it clear, I believe there was a contract, because under the authority of Gibbons and Wright, it's voidable. The contract is voidable if the intoxicated person was unable to understand the nature of the contract and the other party knew of that condition. I don't believe that the person was unable to understand the nature of the contract. And so, therefore, I would argue like that, and I'd say, therefore, that there wasn't an issue with the overcharging. Okay? And what you do is you continue there. You say, look, in the alternative, you could argue and you could say what would happen if you were wrong. So are there any questions on that first part? Second part, the Chinese characters. What's the issue here with Chinese characters?
They're incorrect. It didn't say mates forever. It said something else. What was it? This side up or something silly, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Made in China?
Yeah, who knows? There's some squiggle on a page that he gave.
And the other thing was that he did it freehand, like he didn't actually map it out like you would normally do.
Yeah. But it says on the first paragraph there that that's his specialty is freehand.
Yeah.
But you could imagine some drunk going up to a Chinese Sheila and saying, "Oh, what's mates forever?" And she just scribbles something down and say, "Bugger off."
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably all that's happened.
Actually, I heard about David Beckham. He got on his tattoos here. He's got something back to front there, you know. So you got to be super careful when you have it done. Look, the way I looked at this is that we need to look at what the contract is all about. And I think I used to have a diagram for you guys. I don't know whether I lost it or put it somewhere. You might remember I had it's arrows. I'll do it by hand. So you've got the tattooist here, and you've got the customer here. So the customer does what? Makes a payment, correct? That's the consideration. What does the tattooist do?
Provide the service.
Now, what service did he agree to provide? Was it to tattoo the words "Mates Forever" or the character?
The character.
You see what I mean? Because if you argue it in court, you'd have to say, you'd have to ask the first question: was there a contract? Obviously there is. Sorry, from the previous question, assuming there is a question, assuming there is a contract, we have to work out what the terms were. And the terms are what the consideration is, what each party will do. Now, the money's easy because we know that. In return, he's going to provide a service. That's easy too. What service? Was it the actual words, "Mates are forever," or was it the character? Now, who was it? Daryl, did you just say a minute ago that you believed it was the character?
Yeah, it's the characters that he supplied.
And why do you say it's a character rather than "Mates Forever"?
Because he's on the belief that it's mates forever, and that he's given it to the tattoo artist to do, and insisting on him doing what he has supplied on the paper instead of actually looking up, find out mates what the Chinese character is and take it from there.
VJ didn't have the ability to do it as well.
Yeah.
But the tattoo artist also said they could do it another time and make sure of the actual characters.
Let's go look at the facts here. Third paragraph. VJ said, "Listen, mate, you are drunk and I don't know the Chinese characters for Mates Forever. I would be happy to do the tattoo, but I want you to come back when you're sober and when you can show me what the characters look like." So therefore, he has disclaimed and said, "I don't know what they're like." Okay. So what service does VJ provide? He provides the tattooing service, and he just copies the character and puts the character on the arm. He's not doing, in my opinion, he's not promising to put Mates Forever.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, but if he did say, "I will put Mates in forever," look, I know my wife's Chinese or I'm Chinese, and I know that means Mates Forever, and indeed it isn't Mates Forever, that is a breach of contract, and we do that in the second half of this term. But for this part here, you got to look at what was agreed upon between the parties. Okay. So let me summarise that now. So the question we were asked is whether the arguments about the Chinese characters place us in any danger from a legal perspective. No, I don't believe there is a legal issue here, because I believe the terms and conditions of the contract were that he was only to apply the Chinese character and not to provide something which read Mates and Forever. And the facts back that up. And you would elaborate on that. Any questions on that? Okay. Next one was the third question which you were asked, computer monitor. Okay. So who'd like to have a go? Miranda, we haven't heard from you. She may not have a microphone there. Anyone else like to have a go? Debbie would like to go, or Michael have a go?
Yep, I'll have a go.
Yeah, please.
I believe that he didn't see a price list. He didn't accept help. When he saw it scanned in, he didn't question the price. He just paid it.
Yes.
So he saw the scanned in price and paid it without question.
Okay, so from which week are we talking about? This is law from which week? Oh, which topic?
I believe it's week 4.
Correct.
Offer and acceptance.
Offer and acceptance. So this is it an invitation to treat, or is it just making an offer or reading acceptance? What?
It's invitation to treat. It was on the shelves. He went and helped himself.
Yep. And what's the main case in the area?
Oh.
Remember the cash chemists, Boots?
Yes. I haven't got my cards with me.
Okay.
I'm going to do Michael, probably.
Look, you've had about 50, 60 cases already, so I fully understand. So, when I went through law school, I mentioned to you we had to memorize all these. I had cards. At least you don't have to have them, you have them in front of you. But just as long as you just know the general gist is that in Boots Cash Chemist, what the facts were is that people were going to, the first time in England, they had self-service. People picked it up, and Boots was fined for selling drugs, medicines, without supervision of an authorised pharmacist, something to that effect. And then they went to court, and the court said, no, well, not really, because the pharmacist is at the cash register. This is an invitation to treat, which is an invitation to treaty, using different words. It's an invitation for you to make us an offer. So VJ goes into the shop, he picks the box up, and we know that situations of shop shelves, windows, and displays and things like that, an invitation to treat, he makes the offer to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper then can accept or reject. Now, the facts are a bit vague here, but he had something in the back of his mind was $400, but indeed it was $600. He was told it's $600. He went ahead with it. So I believe, personally, it was a straightforward Boots Cash Chemist situation where it's an offer and acceptance. And so therefore, VJ made the offer, he's the offeror, and the other party being the electronic store receives it as the offeree. Okay, and there's an offer and acceptance as the contract there. Everyone happy with that? Anyone not happy? Okay, the fourth one now, online auction. This can be a little bit of difficult. So would anyone like to have a go at this one?
I'd like to, yeah.
Please.
All right, VJ cannot withdraw his offer on the eBay auction purchase. VJ entered into an auction and was to abide by the rules of the auction. Once he placed a bid, he had made an offer. The seller had accepted the offer at the conclusion of the auction, and the authority is Smythe versus Thomas.
Good boy, you get a chocolate for that. So a virtual chocolate, I'll have it for you. Okay. So let's go through that again. When you have an auction, so let's say it again. Ordinarily, Michael, I can make an offer to you to buy your boat, or you can make an offer to me to buy the boat. Either way is fine. It just doesn't matter which way it works. However, in a number of situations, the offer can go in one direction only. And that's called invitation to treat, where by my words, I invite you to make me an offer. And broadly speaking, it's goods on shop windows, shop shelves. It is brochures, it is auctions, and it is tenders. Okay, they're generally speaking. There's a couple other ones, but they're the main ones. Therefore, what are we talking about? We're talking about an auction. Okay, now we're talking about not just an ordinary face-to-face auction. We're talking about an online auction. As we know from the case of Smythe and Thomas, which is week 4, page 15. Smythe and Thomas tells us that once, I'll read it out to you here. The court said that, number one, eBay's computer was, sorry. Go away. Go away. Just hang on a second. Can you take that? I'm just on the class. Thanks. The court held that eBay's computer was essentially the same as any more traditional auctioneer, and that its role was essentially to facilitate a contract between the buyer and the seller. It also said The moment eBay auction closed, the offer was deemed to have been accepted and the buyer, upon payment, was entitled to take the goods. So therefore, you don't even need to communicate acceptance. The mere fact, and that's what you said a second ago.
Yeah.
And that's whether it's an auction. So Michael, you're the auctioneer. You knock it down to me. I'm standing there. I know I've got it. However, during the auction, I think I can't get it. I walk away, and it's knocked down to me. There's still a contract there.
Yes.
Okay, and that's a situation here due to Smythe and Thomas. As again, week 4, page 15. You can look it up, and so therefore, on the Fall of the Hammer, there was an auction. There was an acceptance, and irrespective whether it's the online version or the other version. So what's the question was whether he was unable to withdraw his offer during the online auction. Of course, he can withdraw it at any time prior to it being knocked down. It was knocked down. Upon knocking down, there's a contract, and it's too late. How are we going with that? Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Right. The next question was just following on from 4, whether any legal issues arise from his final payment deal with the seller of the tattoo gun. Who would like to have a go at that?
That one's the classic Pennell case where there's no consideration given for dropping down the price. So it could be void down the track.
Yeah. So once again, it's been knocked down to me, and you're the vendor, I'm the purchaser. I go to you, want to withdraw, and you say no, and then I say to you, we enter into second agreement. Okay, and the second agreement is where it'll be $200 less, but you've given no consideration. So if it comes to push and shove, you would. There is no contract. Only the first one, the online contract, is the one which is there. In essence, what I, as VJ, am doing, I'm asking for a discount or a gift of $200, and there's no consideration for that. You know? Something has to be done. So therefore, when you're doing things for your clients, make sure there is consideration. So you're all probably familiar with the peppercorn rental, or I'm a government department and I have some rooms which are not being used and I let them out to a charity. Well, therefore, they can pay me $1 a year for those rooms. That's consideration to make the contract enforceable. Okay. So there's that one. That's the tattoo gun. So any questions on the question here in this week's on VJ's question? I think we're pretty well right with that. I had someone ask me about last week's question about the girl who decides she wants to leave Brisbane and basically live on the coast. And she hasn't decided where. And what's happened is that she goes to Removalist, and Removalist has agreed to a lot of things. But the only thing which hasn't been agreed upon is the fee for transport for her goods from Brisbane to wherever she wants. And that's going to be worked out later on. And someone asked me and said that, is that perhaps not complete? And I had a think about that. And completeness relates to the major terms of the contract, which in this case would be price, clearly price. I wouldn't say there would be lack of completeness for the van driver, whether he took that highway or that highway, or how he's going to move it. Naturally, if I took a really long route to say hello to Michael in Perth, that would be of concern. But you know what I mean. So I had a chat to Anthony about that, and we both believe that it's incomplete because the consideration being the price there is no mechanism for it. What she could have said is that something to the effect, look, or indeed the Removalist could have said, look, if you choose somewhere between Brisbane and Gympie, I'll charge you $500. Between Gympie and Bundaberg, I'll charge you $1,000. and between Bundaberg and the top of Australia, $1,500. Okay, figure out the prices. But what I'm trying to say is there is a clear mechanism, and therefore you can't go wrong with that. But when it's vague, you have big problems. And so what people sometimes do is they say, "Oh, look, the price will be such and such, dependent on the price of oil according to the Brent XYZ standard in Singapore on a certain date." That's fine. Do yourself a favor. What happens if in the interim they change that standard? Or you're going to get someone from such organization to be an arbitrator or something like that, and they change the organization. So it's very helpful to have an alternative here. So I thought I'd just mention that to you, just in case there's anything we wanted to talk about there. So that's all I was going to do tonight. Any other questions for you there?
What we're on week 8 this week, aren't we? Express terms.
Next week, yeah. An express term is that which I clearly say to you. So I'm at the hotel desk. You come in and you want to have a room, and you say to me, "You got a room?" I say, "Yeah, I got these rooms." And you say, "I like that room there," and I say it's going to be $200 plus, including GST. You click the card, and that's it. Now, if something goes wrong, what are the terms and conditions of the contract? That's you, Daryl. You pay me $200 including GST, and I give you a room. What about fitness for purpose? What about you having to behave yourself in the sense, you can't be drunk and rolling around the place and things like that? They're all implied terms. But first of all, we need to understand what an express term is. Those terms which are clearly so stated. Now, what happens over a period of time, implied terms, there's a real headache trying to work them out. So we have some in the statute, like guarantees, but also what people are doing is they're being a bit more clever now. They're plucking implied terms out and putting them into express terms. For example, an implied term is, if I'm your boss, Daryl, an express term is that you give me your services, I pay for you, okay? But an implied term is that you will, you work with, you put your effort in and work hard, use proper skill and care. Now, that's implied. That's all a bit wishy-washy. So what people do is actually write that into their employment contracts. So those of you who are working here, have a look at your employment contract. I'd guarantee you 99% that there will be a clause, one way or the other, that you'll have to use proper skill and care in discharging your duties. And that's an example of making an implied term an express term to make it clearer. Okay. So that's what we'll do. Now, just remember, there are a number in the life cycle of a human being. You know how it works. You have a life cycle of a contract as well. We've done the first part, the creation, like bringing the baby to birth. Now we're going to be doing the operations, how to run it, and then therefore be the termination at the end. Okay, it makes it very sensible. So we've created the thing now, and then it's going to be running. So operation issues that we've got to know the terms. What happens if someone breaches the contract? What is a breach? And therefore, what are the remedies? The remedies are critical for you. So you need to get something out of it. I was an expert in a big case for government infrastructure. I was the expert for the state of Victoria, and we were talking about millions and millions and millions lost due to incompetence. And the buyer wants to have a remedy because you said you're going to build this and you didn't. We want a remedy, and how you calculate that, and all sorts of stuff like that. And contract, you really need to have a good understanding of contract because it is the glue that sticks the law together. When I was in the sciences and in maths and accountancy, mathematics is the glue that sticks science together. It holds everything together. The equivalent in the law is contract. Our system is capitalistic, and therefore it all revolves around people honouring their promises. So you need to have a good understanding of contracts. So keep these notes because they'll be very important for you, or just get a good feel of contracts, because you'll be using it for the rest of your life. Most of my work now is with contracts. I deal with a lot within procurement areas, and organizations need to buy supplies, like trucks and stationery and IT products and stuff like that. And the other side needs to sell them, and they're all linked together by contracts. And you need to understand that all negotiate. Every single one of these are negotiated. But anyway, you all finished your assignments? Yeah. Just put them in. Look, get them out of the way. You've got other subjects too. You've got to live too, and don't take it all too seriously. Just life's more important. Just get it out of the way and just keep on going. Easy for me to say that, but it is.
Cyril, I just want to say I sent you an email because since New Year's Eve I've had no power, internet, or phone. It only got restored today.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for an extension because I've worked on it for a couple of hours now, and I think I can get it in by tomorrow at midnight. But I'm getting concerned because these storms normally come around like January, February, which is around the final paper time. But we've been hit every night. Tonight's the first night that we haven't been hit. And Telstra initially told me that I wouldn't get restoration until next Friday, the 12th. But by some miracle, it came back today. So that's a problem for me because it's not just your assignment. There's I have to keep catching up. I think I spoke to you in the first couple of weeks about how I had no power or internet as well because of the regional area that I live in. And so it's becoming a big problem. And I'm not sure, I know it's my own problem. And in another subject, they said that they wouldn't give consideration because I know the date of the exam, so I've got to be somewhere where there's good internet.
Mary, where are you living?
I live at a place called Top Waterloo, which is about 55 k's north of Bundaberg.
Mary, look, I got 4 degrees. I did the last 3 by part time. I know how hard it is, and I used to live overseas where we used to have 6 hours of every day. We used to have no electricity. I'm more than happy to give you an extension. So a reasonable extension, just send through the Moodle in the front. There is a part, I think it's called assessment or services or something like that. Click there and ask for an extension because look, life's too short to have to stress yourself over these things. Just ask for a reasonable extension. Do it properly. Okay.
Okay.
That's it. And if the others don't let you do it, well, focus on theirs first. Everyone's different in this world. I don't believe it's look, I'll stick to what I just said, is that I believe it's pretty tough where you are, and I'm happy to help you with that. But to be reasonable about it. And I don't want others to suffer, but it sounds like it's not helpful there, what's happening. Anyone else have any questions? Good stuff. All right. Next week, look up your express terms, and the weeks after, I think it's implied terms, but get a good feel of that. And I say to you every single week, I say this, go out, read the newspapers, talk to people, look at the movies, and ask questions. Why are they doing it like this? Why is the invoice like this? Why have they asked us this? Why did they go to court? Because that gives you a better understanding of the law, because you're in the beginning of your law studies and you need to understand why they do these things. Okay? Wish you all the best. Take it easy. And if I can get the IT right tonight, I'll have this up. But I think you're all pretty all right. And take it easy, okay? All the best to you. See you later. Okay, bye. Now, stop recording.